Let's start off mainly, let's divide this up maybe into tweaks that we believe are really worth it, regardless of cost, and then tweaks that perhaps don't work. Yeah, if you want to look, if y'all want to open up the chat window, you can share that off to the side. And if anybody wants to post something in the chat and share that, including links.
These don't work.
But who wants to go first with tweaks that they have found that really work?
Before we do that, I don't know if everybody's familiar with Reed. His name says home on the square. I don't know if he joined us for any meetings before, but he's in my club. Reed, this is everybody in the Suncoast Club. Hopefully you could read their names. So I just wanted to formally introduce him to everybody.
Hey, Reed.
Okay.
He's muted, but nice to see you. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, he's muted. Yeah. Unmute yourself.
There we go. Okay.
There you go.
Hello. I just now got the mic unmuted. I've never used Zoom before. Okay.
Okay.
I haven't worked in 15 years, and this stuff was not in when I was working. So, yeah.
Ever since the pandemic, I think we've all become accustomed to using it.
Well, maybe, but I just never used it. I was there. Okay.
Yeah.
We didn't have to sign in by remote control or anything like that.
So when I'm a little confused. When you say if a tweak works, do you mean does it change the sound? See, that's where we're going to get to. Does it change the sound? Does it change in a positive way? How does it change the sound? Or, does it improve the sound? So so, what are we saying if a tweak works? In other words, it changes the sound?
It's going to have to be probably subjective. Unless anybody has objective measurements, I guess it's just your own opinion.
Right.
Okay. Was this directed at me, or have we switched back to Alan?
No, anybody. Somebody. I think Joe had his hand up first, I believe, but he was going to.
I just wanted to introduce Reed. That's all, and I've done that. I don't want anybody to be strangers here, but I would echo John's. A lot of things change the sound, but that doesn't mean a tweak works. That just means it changes the sound. So I assume what we mean by works is that it actually is an improvement, that it is an upgrade of some kind.
Also, should we define what a tweak is? Because, is it just something we add? Like, I can imagine that you can go all out to like even room treatment. Is that a tweak?
No.
So what is a tweak? The tweak is something simple like a foot or a weight or like I don't know, fuse maybe. Is a fuse like a fuse considered a tweak or not?
Yep.
Who is Hookem?
Hookem is Leo.
It is not a component. Cables are a component. I'd say room treatment is a component of the system. So I don't think it's a component. It's like styrofoam cups underneath the cable. The cups are not a component.
Okay, so things that are not in the signal path or they're not part of the thing. Is that what you mean? Like, is a fuse? A fuse is not in the signal path. Is that a tweak or not?
It's a tweak if you buy one of those expensive high-end fuses.
Okay.
More power cords? High-end power cords, maybe?
No.
Call it that. That's whatever you call it. I don't think we have to be formal for the definition. If you think it's a tweak, we'll discuss it. How's that? And John, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just saying, I'll tell you what I have noticed, because I've been through a number of these different tweaks. And I have noticed, I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but when you use like a hard tweak that's like solid aluminum or something like that, it increases the definition of what I'm hearing, depending, let's say I have a CD player or whatever on the spike, or even the roller balls, like I put them on roller balls. And I notice it increases the definition. Now, if I put them on a softer material, it takes away from the definition, but it makes it a little more easily to listen. In other words, it's not a forward sound. I don't know if anyone's had that type of experience with any of these tweaks.
Yeah, John, what are those pads? You've shown us those pads before. Are those like
these are air conditioning pads, and they're like $3 a piece.
Yeah.
And I've seen high-end audio companies sell these for like $30 a piece.
Oh yeah.
So exactly. So they're from an air conditioner. They're real reasonable, real cheap.
Yeah.
So what I
The
try
guy-
to do, in my own opinion, what I try to do is I combine the resonances of different things. This is how I do it. I'll start out with a roller ball, which is metal, on top of Panzerholz wood, and then I'll also put a piece of rubber under it. So I'm getting all different kinds of resonances. That to me has worked the best for me. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that type of thing, but I could just tell you that's worked the best for me.
John, say the name of that wood again, because you cut out.
Panzerholz.
Panzerholz, yeah.
It
It's
is.
They're very dense.
It's made
They're
in
very
Canada.
dense.
A lot of made in Canada.
It's
Yeah.
German.
Very expensive wood. Very expensive wood.
It's German. It means panther wood.
Yep.
Panther wood.
It is. It is literally bulletproof. They line the insides of executive limousines with that stuff
Yeah.
to help make it bulletproof.
John,
And one of the
you-
first speakers ever was made out of Panzerholz. I was watching on the internet. Some company, I forget the name of the company, made their speaker out of Panzerholz. That's
I suspect that was very expensive.
Hey, John,
Probably.
John, were you remember years and years back when there was a fellow named Mike Van Zevers? That was a member. I know Alan remembers him.
Sure.
And
he was over my house. He was over my house, and we were doing exactly what we're talking about here.
I was going to say he's like the master tweaker.
Yes.
I've got a drawer full of his copper feathers and all kinds of stuff that I've got in the
I
drawer.
remember. Absolutely, I remember then. Yeah.
Well, John,
I'm
I don't
curious,
know.
John. John, do you use those absorption devices underneath only your components or underneath the speakers as well?
Underneath the components.
Okay.
In my case, because I'm on the second floor, I don't spike to that floor. I use Herbie Audio Labs spacers, and they're like furniture. They're like furniture gliders, and they're made out of a certain material. Those seem to work really well. So because I don't want to use spikes. Spikes did not work in that room.
That's what I was going to allude to, because if you're on the second floor, when you have a floating floor, so to speak, versus your old system, your old house had the slab, I believe. You were on the first floor with a slab. Right. So did you use spikes there?
Yes, that's great delineation. Yep, that's what I did. I use spikes, definitely work better there. And in this house, because it's a floating floor, I kind of want to separate the vibration. So that's what I use the Herbie Audio Labs for.
Have you actually measured? I'm curious, because you're a student of measurements. Did you ever measure the two and compare? Of course, the speakers were different, so it's hard to compare.
I would probably want it, if I tried to measure it. I have not measured it, but if I tried to measure it, I'd probably do a waterfall measurement to see how long the vibration lasted. I don't know if I'd see any difference in that. You look at the YouTube videos, and they say it's very hard to measure these things, but people are saying that they.
I think you'd have to put it. I think probably if you had one, the best way to do it would be to stick an accelerometer on the speaker.
Yep.
Correct.
Good one. Good point. Good point.
Correct.
Yeah. Interesting. Is anybody using absorption under their speakers? That's what prompted this in my mind. I had posted on our forum about that Stephen Guttenberg video with a guy supposedly blind testing absorption under bookshelf speakers. So there was also the fact that he had like a lead-filled stand as well. But he thought there was a difference and had a friend help him do a blinded study. But it got me to thinking whether or not with my Martin Logans, there would be a benefit to trying spikes, which I have, but I haven't used because I have a wood floor. I'd have to get discs under it. I'm just currently using the rubber feet, which I think is sufficient. But what are y'all doing for your speakers? Anybody have experience with various approaches?
I've used everything on my speakers. I mean, I went to every dollar store and every place, and I tried everything: wood blocks, intermediate soft pads, the whole thing. And sometimes some things I wish I could be as definitive as John is, saying that he loses definition or gains definition with a hard or soft surface. but I can't be that definitive. I also have the Herbie's feet, John, by the way, that they're more like sliders, and I use them for years. And these are the kinds of things that I use for years, and then all of a sudden I remove them and I say, oh, they sound better. So I know that they change the sound and everything that changes the sound, but I can't definitively say if it really is better or not. It's just it depends on my moods. Like if I find that my system is a little aggressive, I might put something soft under it and say, oh, that takes care of that. And then 2 weeks later say, oh, it's not aggressive enough, and then I remove them. And these are the kinds of things that just go in and out of my system. And I have bags and bags of this stuff hanging in my closet too.
So do I, right here.
Right.
I would try the spikes, Alan, because the quads that I have came with some spikes as an option, right? And also a weight. So in the back there's a piece of iron that you put on, and I strapped it down so that, and it helps with vibration. I think the speakers sound better when they're spiked and have that weight on them, in my case. So you might, and I
Interesting.
think you have similar speakers to me, so you might try something like that.
Yeah.
I didn't
Mike,
have
I
to
see
buy
you holding
anything.
up.
I didn't have to buy
Yeah.
anything, by the way. These things came with the quad, so I'm just using what it provided.
Yeah. I'm going to spotlight Mike because he's holding stuff up to make his picture larger here.
Yeah, this is one of Mike Van Zier's gizmos that I've gotten from him. Here's some other stuff. These brass feathers are supposed to place on top of the speakers, and they're supposed to add a little more sparkle to. And this thing adjusts you can adjust the resonance of this device. This is for a piece of gear, so you put it on equipment, not on the speaker. And I have a variety of wooden blocks that have angular cuts in them, and this, like I said, this is a gizmo box from Mike Van Zier's, and who's all about tone. That's all he is all about. And this little brass nugget thing. Anyway, this stuff is in my drawer, so it's not. I tried it. I used it for a while, and I said, yeah. And then this thing, cable elevators.
Yep.
They look cool. They didn't, other than keeping it off of the carpet, it really didn't make any difference that I could tell. So again, in my cabinet. So
those would be great for people that use robot vacuums. I've been concerned about that. I have a robot vac, and I'm afraid it's going to gobble up my my speaker cables.
Oh yeah. So do you have them up on lifters?
No, I actually was able to block out the area behind my speakers on the app so that the robot doesn't go there.
Yeah. So anyway,
I'd have to manually adjust it.
That's my treasure chest of tweaks that I guess either they didn't work or they didn't work enough for me to deal with them. So,
well, I have a question then, a general question. Has anybody? I have not heard cable lifters change the sound of my system. I used them for years, and then when I removed them, and they keep falling over, so I had to keep, like, it's almost like an erector set, I'm always, and they're falling, and I'm adjusting them, and then I just got disgusted and said, I'm going to remove them. And I could not hear any difference in sound at all. So I pretty much gave up on them. Has anybody heard the difference between them? And if you did hear a difference, what was the difference?
Reed, you had your hand up if you wanted to respond to that.
Yeah.
And then John.
Yeah. Do you have audio from me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, I have tried cable elevators and did some real scientific investigation. It has to do with the electric field radiated by the speaker cables and the grounding that is necessary in the slab of the house. Okay, those are the two operant factors. For instance, if you have speaker cables that are twisted, how you rotate the cable versus the floor vector makes a difference. Yes, they make a difference. No, I don't consider it a big deal. I don't use them now because it's not convenient and my speaker cable's twisted anyway. So yes, it makes a difference. It was pretty obvious.
That you heard? A difference that you heard?
Absolutely, and it was repeatable, and we tried it off and on for weeks with another.
Okay.
So yes, But do I
Interesting.
use them? Do I use them now? No. It's just the change was not worth the effort or the inconvenience. So it was one of those things. But yeah, I've been there.
Yes, Gary.
It's time for Gary's universal principle of tweaking. And that is that any change that you make in your system will be perceived as an improvement.
No.
I don't agree with that at all.
No, most of the time it's a loser. And it has to be repeatable as well. That's a big thing.
Okay, well, Colin, you want to respond?
Well, somebody mentioned it earlier, the little tubes, maybe it was Mike, the little Helmholtz resonators. And David Slotnick, I think it was him, had a performance up here at the that community center we used to meet with that Ernie arranged. I can't remember the name of that. And
Sun City? It's Sun City?
Yeah, Sun City. Thank you. Sun City. Yeah. And David had gone around and put these little Helmholtz resonators, which quite frankly, I think are way too small to attenuate anything, all around the room. And I want to say it was little Jeff, but I can't remember if it was. But somebody went and slowly took them all out. And you know what? Nobody noticed any difference.
It was Rick Miller that did that.
Yeah, Rick took them out, I think. Yeah. Thank you. He's quite the clown. Yeah, Rick took them out. Nobody noticed.
Huh.
So do you mind if I have a little show and tell? Can you put me on so I can show?
Sure, I'll spotlight you and you'll have the room, so to speak.
I like the dance routine with music.
So I showed you the roller balls, and I do use these, and these really work really well for me. And I use them in combination with a pad underneath. So like I said, I combined the wood, the different resonances of the materials. There's another softer sponge that you can that I also try. This is definitely softer. This is actually a sanding pad. All my stuff is really cheap, but it works. I don't care if it's cheap or not. This is a sanding pad.
You go to the Home Depot tweaking.
Yes, I did. I'm telling you, you got to try something. It really improves the sound, especially if you combine these resonances. I mean, I've heard it. Could I double blind it? Could AJ double blind it with me? I probably don't think I could.
Wouldn't it give you a little grittier sound?
It could. And then I also have some springs here, and I tried the springs. This was an interesting thing to try. I didn't really love the sound of it because it almost resonated too much at like boing, you know, that type of. I didn't love these. Okay.
John,
and then the cool part about it is I was reading on DIY forum is people are using brushes, especially for light components like CD players. They're getting 3 of these brushes. Now, I really haven't tried this as much as I want to. They're getting 3 of these brushes and they're putting the component on here. So it's kind of like gliding on air, if you know what I mean. And speaking of air, then I went to this. This is a blow up. You can blow this up and inflate it, make it thicker. And then you get 3 of these and you can pump the air into it, so it's so it's like it's floating on air, if you know what I mean. Yeah, so
like a bladder.
Yes,
it's like a bladder.
Yes, it's an air bladder, exactly. And I've tried it with an inner tube too. From what I understand, you want to get the resonance really low for that technique to work. But then I've tried other things like these roller balls and this and that. I like the bigger roller balls better. This really didn't do a damn thing. And then let's see. Then the other thing is the compression. Has anyone tried to compress? I think Maple Shade sells these. These are brass.
Yes. I've got a big one for my turntable. I've got a big one for my turntable, but not.
Do you notice the sound difference if you take it off and on?
Do I mix a record flat?
Yeah, that's true. It'll help that for sure.
Mix a record flat.
But I tried this, and I really feel that it improves the sound. I mean, they're selling these.
What are you putting it on? What are you putting it on, John?
I am actually putting on my my DAC, my mini DSP DAC. I put it right in the center. It's not, the component's not really built like a tank. So I put some damping material on the inside of it, and I tried to strengthen it at the same time. Then I added this to it. So now it's built more like a tank. You know how a lot of these amplifier companies, they put so much effort into building these things, like with 3/4 inch aluminum and stuff like that, and they say it makes a difference. It might, like I said, I don't know if I could double blind it, but it might. So that's kind of what I've done.
Hey, John,
Interesting.
have you yet tried the 3M RF damping sheets?
The damping sheets?
3M makes RF. They look like 8.5 by 11 pieces of
I've
paper.
seen those. Those are expensive, right?
They are, but you should try them.
I use something like that damping sheet. This is much
Yeah,
cheaper.
that's not,
Yeah, but
that's
it's
not damping. You're
that's-
talking
that-
about interference.
That's
talking about
well,
RMF
EMI
interference.
RFI.
Yeah.
Oh,
RFI,
EMR
yeah,
damping. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I know what
It's
you're
not
saying.
damping.
And I have done that, and I use cloth copper.
Yeah, that'll
There's
work.
the cloth copper that you can get on Amazon. And
Yeah, I've
tried
seen it.
that. I thought I could hear the difference there also.
Yeah.
It was
the
interesting.
foil cap, probably.
Say again,
Let me
Mikhail.
Foil
read. What
cap.
are you're damping us?
Yes.
Does anybody use sorbothane? The big sorbothane pucks or the sorbothane sheets?
I've tried that.
Yeah, I tried as well.
The problem I found with sorbothane is it loses its
Yeah,
resilience over time.
yeah.
You get a durometer of like 30 or 40 or 50 or whatever it is you need for a particular mass you're trying to deal with, and over time it just loses its resilience.
It starts getting sticky too.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's not. Well, what you do is you wrap it in like
Saran wrap.
saran wrap. Exactly.
Saran wrap. Yeah.
I don't recall if it was the Florida Audio Expo or maybe when I went to Expona, but the isoacoustics folks at one or the other shows had the same speakers, one sitting on their isoacoustic feet and the other on just the standard feet of the speaker. And they switched back and forth to supposedly illustrate the difference of having the speakers mounted with the isoacoustics absorbers underneath. Was that at the Florida Audio Expo? Anybody recall?
Yes, they were at Florida. They were also at Expona.
Yeah, and there was a difference, I think, in the sound, but I attributed that to the speaker being elevated a little bit so that the tweeter was just in the mid-range driver
Also
was just a
different
little
position in the room.
more aligned.
Or perhaps
you know.
farther. It had to be farther apart too. I haven't seen the room, but in order for them to AB two speakers, one of them's got to be on the outside and one of them's going to be on the inside, correct?
Good.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. But it was interesting. I mean, they did a good sales, presentation, certainly marketing. And my friend Laszlo, who was with me, was impressed. He's got Magnapans. He lives in Arizona. He's got Maggie's. And he thought it would be useful for him, if nothing else, to raise the speaker up a little bit. And he ended up, however, we went to the SVS room and they were selling a very similar product for about a third of the price, a whole set of 4 of these. A little bit different design, but the same concept. And he bought those. I asked him last week if he installed them. He said he had, and he thinks it's better, but he didn't really do a before and after comparison. But he said for the cost and so forth, he thought it was worth it, and he's happy with that. Along the same lines, I think for Leo, myself, and anybody else who has dipole speakers, and this probably isn't necessarily a formal tweak, but something that I found to be very significant. I'm going to share a picture here. Allow me for just a moment. Where is the share? Share here. I just took this picture earlier. And is that me that's
It's
beeping?
time for my meds. It's time for my meds.
Okay. These are 3 tweaks in one picture. I have, as you know, Martin Logan electrostatic speakers. The Expression is also known as the 13As. And the rake angle of the panel is very critical in the overall tonality and soundstage depth. And I bought this device that measures the exact angle, and I can vary the rake back or the tilt. I also, on the floor, I put in this, I bought it off Amazon, this adhesive tape measure. Basically, it's an adhesive ruler tape, paper, pretty cheap. I measured it exactly on the floor, and I can play around with the toe in of the speakers as well. And certainly for Martin Logan's and any other dipole speakers and regular dynamic speakers, that can make a huge difference. And by using this, I jot down, it's not blinded, but I listen with my specific tracks that I use for determining whether I'm happy or not. And I just have a level that I put underneath against the feet, so I can always recreate an exact position. And I'll move it like a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch at a time, angled in or out, until I'm happy with the overall sound. Of course, front to back as well, distance to the back wall. So those, interestingly enough, about 20 years ago, a number of us who had Martin Logan's got together and went to their factory. At the time was still being manufactured in Lawrence, Kansas. And they had just come out with the Summits, which I had. And they only had the default angle. Let me stop screen sharing here. They only had one default angle of the speaker raking back, but you could adjust the knobs on the bottom on the legs and adjust it slightly. And we talked to the engineers about that. And the engineers were quite interesting. They said, number one, the reason we have it raked back is that when we manufacture these, we have to think about how they're going to be shipped and transported and how many can be fit into a container. So that ultimately made a huge impact on their shipping costs. So they had to keep the whole box, once it's fully packed, a certain height. And they had to, depending upon the speaker, they decided that the rake angle had to vary with each design, each model, based upon the height of the panel. For nowadays, the top of the line ones are straight up and down. The Renaissance 15s are totally upright. My Martin Logan Expressions have a slight, I think the default is about a 3-degree angle backwards. And the Summit X's only came with one set of feet. A number of us there had already been experimenting with this on talking about it on the forum and sharing our experience, so much so that one of the Martin Logan owners forum participants, who is a machinist, started making other legs for us to purchase to change the angle. And when Martin Logan came out with the Summit X, which was the next iteration, they actually came out with new legs that had a lot more flexibility in the rake angle, so you could adjust it exactly the way you wanted it for your room. And they agreed that it was very significant. And I have found for my setup that has been the most critical or most instrumental, pardon the pun, change in sound, is just changing the rake angle of the speaker. And the other thing is also doing with something like electrostatic speakers is the portion of the panel that is in line with your ears is possibly changing. So that can impact the tonality. So I don't know if any of you guys have experimented much with that. I'll read and then Gary.
Guys, I've used lasers to aim speakers for years. Okay. If you have a flat surface to work off of, a laser line generator laid up against the side of the speaker, in the case of the 63s, I use frame, and shoot back to the listening position. And you can vary the amount of merge. Typically what you're shooting for is a merge point about 2 feet behind your head. All right, sometimes more, sometimes less, depends upon the room, depends upon the speaker. But this is far superior to measuring the angle with a incline measure. I have those too, but I never thought about using it. So the laser wins every time.
Yeah, I'll get to you in a second, Gary. One of the interesting things I did, I have a laser measure also that I use a lot, but my house was just a tract home that was built, cheap, standard builder. And I once took my laser measure to see how square the room is and found out there was about an inch difference.
Yeah.
So when I was measuring aligning my speakers based on how far they were from the wall, that there was actually a little bit of an angle from the right to the left. They were not totally aligned to the listening position. Yeah, there you go.
So you got that level underneath, that level that you placed underneath the speakers? you better watch out because John's going to steal that idea. He's going to go to Home Depot now and get a level to put under his speakers.
Yeah,
I just use that. I don't use the level. I just use it to align the feet so I can pop it out and see where it is on the ruler on the floor. I can use a yardstick or anything that's long and straight. That's all. Yeah, another Home Depot tweak.
Another Home Depot tweak. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I have the Boss. Here's my Boss laser tape measure that I use.
That's
and I
two.
actually put Post-it notes on the panel of my speaker, and I mount this on a tripod in my listening position so I can rotate to make sure that because I can't base it on the wall measurement, I take setting the sweet spot, make sure that each speaker is equidistant from the main listening position because I know my back wall goes back an inch farther on the right side.
I've done that as well and never noticed any difference.
What kind of speakers do you have though?
Me?
Yes.
Yeah, ESL 63s.
Oh, so you do have stats. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because I think it's more important
I've had
with
this-
stats.
I've had this pair for about 40 years.
Wow. And they're still holding up?
Oh yeah, they work fine. I've never had any problem. I don't know, these people that have problems have some other issue. I don't know what.
Well, yours were probably made in England back in the day.
They are, absolutely.
Yeah, now they're made in China. Yeah.
I know that. And I hear tell the quality's better now than it was then.
Oh, really? Huh.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Oh, yeah.
There's the panel. Made in the UK.
What do you
So,
drive them with? I'm curious.
Halcro.
Amp Y.
Halcro DM58s.
Oh, nice. Nice. So, yes, Mikhail, you've been sitting there
Yeah.
patiently with your hand up. Sorry.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So my tweaks, everything tweaks are all obviously vinyl related. And with vinyl, all the tweaks with vibration and reducing or something else are actually very easy to hear. They probably the only part where I couldn't hear. I changed suspension on my CD player, my tube amplifiers, my anything. Could hardly hear the difference, if any. But with turntables, the difference is huge. So let's go. I'll show some of my tweaks. Okay. This is one. It's in my room, and look at this called Aerostat. It's ionizing air blower from Amazon. Cost less than $100, and basically button your record before you wash it in positive and negative ions, and thus removing static almost immediately.
I can't eat it now. I don't eat
It's the Amazon everyman version of the Furatech D-Stat.
Yes, it's cheap, and it's basically what it does. It's remove static before you wash the record, and as a result, it actually washes much better because all the particles are much easier to be washed out by the
Vacuum.
not vacuum. I'm using
The ultrasonic.
Ultrasonic?
Yeah, ultrasonic. Yes. So the second one is this device. See that?
That's from CS
Ionizer.
Port, isn't it?
It's anti-static device also.
Yeah, so
It's the company which manufactures the unit is SPI. It's an industrial, very, very light version of also positive and negative ions source. Works in a distance approximately 10 to 12 inches and very often found on the tables of people who work with electronics. Probably you can buy it. I think I paid $160 for it on some sale of white boxes, some company liquidating the stuff, but it's still about $250 maybe new, plus the holder for it is about $30. And the one which is officially sold and promoted by Mike Fermer, made by DS Audio, this sucker cost $1,800. That's exactly the same. The only difference is that it's not as easy to mount because it needs space and it's it looks like this black piece from Led Zeppelin Presence. If you look at the other turntables, so this is one. It's called Symposium Seeger, and this is like by HRS. It's way more expensive stuff. Those, again, I really tried different platforms and everything else. I found them working, and it's kind of weirdly, one platform works better with one turntable, and another platform works better with another. In turntables itself, are they suspended, and there is a magnetic suspension, there's tons of other gizmos, yet if you add more anti-vibration devices, it helps. Even I can show you the last thing, and then I'll shut up. This one right here. Can you see it? The motor for turntable?
Describe what it is.
Under the motor of turntable, you have another small platform.
Yeah.
It's also made by Symposium, and it's basically kind of miniature version of their big platforms. And it's also, it sits between also their platform and the motor. So it some kind of separates the motor from the main platform and reduces vibration, which goes to the turntable itself from the motor. And it works. It really does change the sound. Okay, so that's why, there are a lot of other, I know tricks which don't work, like taping pennies to windows, freezing your record jackets while you listen to the record, and so on. But this one does.
Freezing the record? I don't think I've ever heard of that one.
Yeah. The idea is that when you're listening to a record, you take the jacket and you put it in the freezer while your record is playing.
Okay.
That must be.
It doesn't work, you're sad, right?
No, not probably not. But you can try.
Make your records.
I read, like, for example, you need to remove your implants to improve your, performance. And listen to music naked. Naked, without implants, without your dentures, and that's the way you should do it. Now, that's kind of a tweak. It's free, basically. I mean, dental work is expensive, but
there was an audio store in Long Island that wouldn't let you into the sound room with a watch. You had to take your watch off, or else you wouldn't be allowed in the sound room.
Oh, that's great.
Tony, what was the name of that place?
That wasn't esoteric audio. No, that was
anyway. We both have a lapse of memory on this guy.
Yeah, I know.
He made you take your watch off because that screwed up the sound. So
that's great.
Yeah.
By taking your glasses off. Some people say when you're listening seriously, remove your glasses because you're reflecting off of them.
You guys have the great tweaks, man. This is those in record jackets, no watch. That's out there. I'm sorry.
Has anyone tried any products from Synergistic Research?
No.
Ted Denny gets blasted all over the place all the time. I was just wondering if anybody's ever tried any of his stuff at all.
When I went into the room, when Synergistic Research was with Van Schweikert in the room in the Florida Expo there, I went into the room and the guy was showing me these the fuses. And he says, did you ever try the fuses, the blue fuses or the gold fuses? I forget which color they were. And I said to him, no, I said, I won't pay $100 for a fuse.
fuse.
And he said to me, no, these are $200.
That's right. Yeah,
I said,
you're right.
and it comes in a large box. I said, well, how
Oh,
many is in
David.
that large box? One for
Yeah, he-
$200.
He said, "You're
So
right. You won't pay $100 for a fuse.
That's right.
You'll pay two."
Right. So I said to
And
myself at that
I
moment,
think the
Go ahead,
lesson
John.
here is just what you said. Have fun with the tweaks, but find ways you can do it that you feel make the sound, but is reasonably priced. Because
absolutely.
oh man, these companies can really jack it up, you know.
I know. And then they
Gary,
had
you
this
had your hand up.
contraption. If you remember, they had this
I've had
contraption
my
in the
hand
middle
up
of the
for a
room
while.
that looked like a bell, and it had a pole, and then there's
That's
two poles on the other side. I don't know if they
resonator.
were supposed to resonate or absorb or what, but
Yep.
I
He
don't
has
know
a
who
lot
heard
of-
that.
Let me get to Gary and then Colin and then back to Reed. And by the way, you
Okay.
guys can also put up the icon, the raised hand icon if you want. It'll stay up there to remind me. Okay, Gary, go ahead.
Where is it?
Somehow
Where on
I'm
the
glad
screen is
that
it
AJ is,
located?
Under reactions, it'll recognize
Somehow.
a hand.
somehow I'm glad that AJ isn't here tonight. All I wanted to do was comment about the toe-in that Alan was talking about. I would like to describe the technique that Mark Davis used when he designed the Soundfield 1 in order to keep the center image centered. You may not remember that, but he took a couple of box speakers and he set them in the stereo position, and then he moved off center, say directly in front of the right speaker. And then he had an assistant rotate both of the speakers, toe them in gradually until the center image recentered. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay, that made the farther speaker more in the axis, and he was closer to the nearer speaker, and so it balanced both of them so that no matter where he sat, the image was centered. I think AJ does the same thing because his demo in the library had that same property where you could sit off center and the center was still centered. So I think that's one of the more valuable tweaks that you could try, especially with Alan, with your Martin Logan's, maybe, perhaps.
I've done that. I've actually had extreme toe in, which does that. When you're more sitting off axis, you still get a nice image, but you lose something in the tonality. It also does widen the sweet spot, but it's not quite as clear. It's a trade-off. And ultimately, all of us have to decide what sounds best to us. Ultimately, it's not
that tweak is
necessarily.
made. Yeah, that tweak is made for direct, what you call it, directivity controlled loudspeakers. That's the only ones that work with. That's a Geddes tweak. Earl Geddes came up with that years ago. And I used to do it with horns, but certain speakers it won't work with. And because they start getting, if you toe them in too much, some of them start getting thin sounding and you just don't have the meat. So I agree with you, Gary, that it does help the image for a person sitting next to you. But I hate to say it, I'm kind of a hog. When I sit in a sweet spot, I want to get the best sound that I can. But
right, I don't care about what people's beside me here, honestly.
Yeah.
Mark
Davis. I've
decided
I've gone back to more or less.
He would have had a flat. He would have had a flat power response so that the frequency response doesn't change as you get off axis.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
I think Juan, did you have your hand up at one point? I think Juan is part of your club, right?
Yes, he's my vice
Joe?
president. Yeah.
Hey,
Yes.
He's one of the founders.
real
see you,
quick
Juan.
question. I'm not sure if it's been addressed yet. Has anybody experimented besides Joe using some type of interface in between the speaker and the floor of different materials? I know Joe has used butcher blocks.
Did that.
I use marble, granite. Has anybody experimented successfully with different interfaces between their speaker and the floor?
I got those popcorn patio stones at one point and set it because I had carpet on the floor. I still do, but I don't worry about this anymore. And I took one of those 12 by 12 patio stones, concrete patio stones, and I put it under my speakers and then coupled the speakers with spikes to the patio stones. It made things a little tighter. I thought in the bottom end, but it was a bit unsightly. And you know, not that I'm terribly worried about that, but after a while of trying to move them around and move the thing, I said, okay, that's enough of that. So I stopped. But I have tried a concrete slab underneath the, not marble or anything, it's just concrete. So
I tried that with tile underneath. When I had carpeted floors, I had a big leftover tiles, 12 by 12, that I put underneath my old Martin Logans with spikes then. I it had a downward firing sub, those old speakers, and it probably helped a little bit in that regard because it was a hard surface to reflect off of. But it was unsightly, and after I and my wife stubbed our toes on it a couple of times, I got rid of it.
yeah, there you go. I forgot that. I did that too. Yeah.
I use those concrete slabs as well. I bought them at Home Depot, and they're 1 inch thick. And
Yep.
basically, I bought 10 of them, and I started with my speakers up 5 inches. And basically, I used them for to find out what was the best height for my speakers. And it ended up that the best height was 3 inches, 3 of those. So I removed them, and then I had like a custom made butcher block made for them, and at that height, and they were a perfect height, and I used them for that. But right now I use a slab, like I put them on some kind of marble slab. I'm not sure if it was granite. I think it was granite. And in my small room, which, can be prone to standing waves in the base, it really tightened up my base to put these on a stone, a tight stone on a rug, because everything's going to move on a rug. And I didn't want absorption so much. I was looking for definition. And when I put these under it, I got tons of definition, and that's where they're staying.
Yeah, if you're interested in those, in the granite and stuff, the pieces like that, if you go to a granite shop that makes kitchen cabinets and stuff, they have the drops from where they cut the sinks out, which they pretty much almost give them away for almost nothing. That you can get those pieces if you're looking for something like that. That's a little more attractive than a concrete thing from Home Depot. Don't tell John you can get those slabs at Home Depot. He's going to be back there again.
Yeah, well, don't tell me, because I actually spent money on making granite stands.
Oh,
and there were spikes that were actually epoxied into the granite stand. So I had granite speaker stands, and I had them made. Don't ask me how much I paid. That was in my foolish days. I don't get to do that now. But anyway, I thought it kind of had a colder sound to it. I thought it was defined, but you don't think granite or stone rings, but it can ring.
Oh, granite rings terribly.
It rings terrible. So what I did is I took lead, I dampened it with the bottom of it with lead, and that helped a lot. But I still think it had a little bit of a cold sound to it comparatively. But
well, it all depends on your speakers and the situation and what you're looking for. And I don't try to reason as to, it's a hard surface, it's a soft surface, what type of wood it is, and what frequency it vibrates. If it works, it works. And if it don't, it goes into that big bag that I have with all my other isolation devices.
I'm going to share a real quick tweak here, and then I'm curious to hear Phil, who does a lot of tweaking, if he has any suggestions or perspectives to share. But before I call on you and put you on the spot, I'm going to share a very inexpensive tweak that all of us should consider doing. Or the equivalent, cleaning out your ears. It's unbelievable. I think that's something that definitely is beneficial and inexpensive and definitely works.
I didn't see Phil there. Hello, Phil. How are I have a long time no see, sir.
My microphone isn't working real well. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, wow. I'm really surprised. Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of like the father of tweaks in the club, I guess. I've been trying everything under the sun, thick cable lifters, fuses, you name it. I've tried it. Right now, I just ordered some speaker isolation devices from Tough Nut. Anybody heard about Tough Nut?
Yes.
Yeah. I just got them, but but the studs are 3/8 of an inch, and the inserts in the bottoms of the speakers are a quarter. I was hoping to get them done today, but I was unable to get everything sorted out. So tomorrow will be a good day. The things that I've tried that really do work. The fuses work for me. They work really pretty well. I also put capacitors, high voltage capacitors, very small values across the fuse holders, soldered them across the two terminals of the fuse holders, and that is amazing. I've taken out the power switch from the equipment that I leave on all the time. It's kind of like, why bother? And those have improved things. Of course, power cords are another story, and that's not really part of this issue, but I've tried all sorts of different configurations with power cords, and I've heard audible differences in everything. Interesting that power cords that work for power amplifiers don't work for digital devices, and they sort of work, but there's a difference there. And what else have I tried in the way of tweaks? Oh yeah, I'm using magnetic levelers on my equipment.
Martini glasses.
Oh
the martini
yeah,
glasses.
my martini glasses. I built diffusers out of inverted martini glasses. I glued them all to a board, points standing out. I think if you've been to my house, you've seen them. And the rationale for this came about from my work at Bell Labs. They had an anechoic chamber over there, and they used soft wedges in order to absorb the sound. Okay, so let's think about what the opposite function of that would be. Hard wedges would diffuse the sound. Okay, so what I thought, what's an economical situation that I could buy from Home Depot or from a party store that would supply, stuff for weddings and things like that? And I came up with these martini glasses, glued them to a piece of poster board, and they worked. They work really well. And Brad uses them. I use them. A couple of my other friends use them. And it's real interesting because they're very cheap and you can put them everywhere. And I've moved mine around a lot. I've got bipolar speakers, and there's a lot of them behind them. And it does seem to work for me. But the most recent addition that I haven't tried yet is these tough nut absorbers. I've got furniture glides underneath them right now. I'm very much in agreement with what John said earlier about the type of flooring really affects the type of device that you put underneath your speaker. I used to have an 8-inch monolithic slab in my Colorado home, and I used spikes right to the slab, and that worked great. And it, like John said, everything he said, it improved the definition and all this. The bass got tighter, and everything really worked out really well. But now that I've got a floating floor, that's another whole challenge. And that's why I'm trying these tough nut things, because I know the floor is moving. I know it is. I can feel it. Heck, the walls are moving, So so that there's a lot of things that you have to consider. There's no guaranteed that this device will work in every scenario. And you just have to try it. Sometimes it costs you some money. Sometimes it's not that expensive. But the point is that if you don't try it, if you just listen to what other people are saying, that's silly. That's just you got to try it yourself, because if it makes a change for you, you should stick with it, and if it doesn't, go on, move on to the next thing.
Full agreement with you, Phil.
Pardon?
Full agreement with you, Phil.
Yeah. You have to use your own judgment, and I won't spend $1,000 for a fuse, but I'll spend $3 for a Chi-Fi fuse, and it worked. But worked better was the Teflon shut across the fuse holder. That worked really well. Combination of them worked very well.
Could you explain, could you or anyone explain the science or the rationale behind the fuse thing? I can't wrap my head around it. I mean, is it adding something or taking something away? What are the fuses doing? Is it a filter or adding something? What do you
I've
think?
made a measurement, an impedance plot of a fuse using a very low impedance measuring device. And over 3 kilohertz, the impedance of the fuse rises. This is any standard bus fuse, which you see inside of a piece of equipment. The impedance rises. Well, what that means is that the voltage below 3 kilohertz is pretty close to what the wall outlet is able to provide. But because there's this insertion loss because of the fuse, that voltage changes with frequency.
Yeah,
So
but we're talking about a 60 hertz signal, right? The AC signal.
no, you're talking about a modulated 60 hertz signal.
What do you mean by
Okay.
modulated? I mean,
Well, in other words, what the amplifier is delivering to the speakers is also delivered through the power transformer back into the wall outlet.
Correct.
It's not a one-way show.
No.
Okay, it's a bidirectional function.
Yep.
So that's what a transformer does. Now, I hear these people naysaying about this, but have you tried it?
Oh, I see.
Have you
So you're
tried
saying
it?
that the amp is driving a transformer that feeds back into the AC outlet? Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
it does.
And then that's where the fuse makes a difference?
Yes.
And how is
And
that listenable? I mean, am I hearing that?
Well, you just have to try it. Yeah, see, it is audible, but like I say, I wouldn't spend $1,000 for a fuse, but I would spend $50 for a Teflon fuse, a good Teflon fuse to go across the fuse holder, and it's
Teflon
not
cap.
that hard to do.
I'm sorry to, you know better than all of us, but you said Teflon fuse, and I think you meant Teflon cap.
Excuse me, Teflon cap. Yeah,
Correct.
sorry, my bad. Yeah, Teflon cap. And Teflon's one of the best insulator you can buy practically.
What exactly would a Teflon cap do? What's happening with that?
Well, what happens is that the impedance that rises with frequency is shunted by the fuse or by the capacitor that doesn't rise. Okay, it rises way beyond the audible range. Okay, it starts to rise at about somewhere between 40 and 60 kilohertz for a small capacitor. And anyway, so the point is that you're linearizing the impedance from the transformer through the fuse back to the wall outlet. There's no insertion loss.
How much does a capacitor like that run for?
Well, it depends. It depends on the size. Plus the fact Teflon caps are big. Okay, they're physically large. I put like a 0.06 in my power amp because there's lots of room, but inside of my little SW6, my audio switch, I put like a 0.003.
This is microfarads?
Yeah.
So I mean, if you go back to the outlet, how does that get back to the speaker where you can hear the difference, right? Because you're driving the outlet, but how is that listenable? You're not listening to the outlet, you're listening to the speaker.
Well, you see, that's
to the outlet.
I'm sorry?
You are.
Or you are listening to the outlet.
Oh, you are?
See the issue, if you ever had a tube amplifier, one of the common ways tubes get rid of the DC component on the tube is use a transformer to couple it to either to the next stage or to the speakers.
Okay.
Okay. So the same thing happens there, is that the speakers, the transformer isolates the component from the speaker, but still the speaker, the amplifier sees the load of the speaker. Okay, and of course, what is happening on the speaker gets transferred back to the amplifier through the transformer. Okay, that's called damping.
Oh.
That's called damping.
I see.
I'm curious, are any if this is such a significant effect, why aren't manufacturers including this in their amplifiers?
Yeah.
Audio research does.
Oh, they
audio research actually takes the time to match the phase of the fuse. There's a diode effect in a fuse also. Takes the time in order to make sure that the fuse is polarized properly. They do that on all of their gear, and they discourage you from changing the fuse.
Oh, interesting. I never heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
Gentlemen, I have to leave. I'm sorry. I enjoyed the conversation. It's good seeing all of you and everything, but I have to take off. And I hope to see you at the meet that we have at the recording studio.
Yeah, how about on the 20th? Do you think you'll be able to make it when AJ and I are doing that comparison?
On the 20th, I'm looking at my calendar, although you know that doesn't mean much.
Well, there's a wait list, but we would welcome you in the back door.
All right. Well, great. Yeah. Let me, I don't know if I have to do something online, or is that something I can just say, yes, I will write that down on my calendar. And
yeah, I'll shoot you an email with more info.
All right. Thanks, Alan. And it was a pleasure seeing all you guys. You guys have a great night.
Good, Mike.
Bye.
Thanks, Mike.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Don't forget, Mike, it's a Monday.
No, no, it's not. So that's interesting. I'm curious if I think you offered to do something like that with my speakers. I didn't want to risk that, Phil, but if you just took a capacitor with alligator clips and put it across the amplifier or something, how audible would that be?
Stop.
It would be. Can you hear me? It doesn't. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
It would be. It wouldn't be as good as a solder connection, because we're talking about really low impedances. I mean, we're talking about, hundreds of a milliohm. So anything that's going to add to that, such as the contact resistance of the alligator clips across the bare terminals of the fuse holder, that would affect it. But you would be able to hear the impact of it and appreciate it better if it were soldered.
Yep.
Well, you should be able to measure it there. I would think that'd be like with like an ohm meter or anything, but
Well, it would be a
if you
tough
were to
measure.
measure the speaker response, wouldn't you be able to measure something?
Yeah, well, it's called a milliometer, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
And what I have one that I can do an impedance sweep with to measure very, very low resistances. And yep, somebody's grabbing one right there. Yep, there it is. So the point is that most people will look at the DC component of a fuse and say, oh, it's a dead short. Well, you're right. At DC, it's very, very, very low. But if you start measuring what that resistance is at frequencies above DC, which is what audio is all about, up to 20 kilohertz, then what happens is things change. And it's that change that you want to nominalize. You don't want to have the fuse, the insertion loss that the fuse introduces, vary. Once you do that, then the sound will be softer in the hot top octaves. You won't be as clear. You won't have as much definition in instrument locations and within the soundstage and things of that nature. So, I mean, take $3, send it to China, wait a month, try it in your system. Easy test.
Yeah, interesting.
You ought to do one of those show and tell things with the fuses.
Also, one of the problems was the fact that Hookham, whoever that is, was we were talking power supply fuses, not speaker fuses.
No, we're talking about, I'm talking about the stuff behind the devices, like amps and so on.
You didn't sound like you were on that page.
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I wasn't referring to speakers at all.
No, I mentioned speakers because I know at one point Phil wanted me to do something with my electrostatic speakers. I think that was a different suggestion. Yeah.
Phil, would you be better off without a fuse? Like, could you put a short across a fuse and let's say you wouldn't have any protection, obviously, but is that better or not?
Fire.
Well, yeah, it's dangerous. Okay, if in fact something,
but would it sound better? I mean, if I remove the fuse and put a short, is that better?
For a reason.
I know. I'm putting away
right.
It's an experiment just to understand the physics.
As an experiment, you could do that. You could actually, they make brass slugs the size of fuses that you could go ahead and stick inside of the fuse holder just as a test. I would never leave it in there.
Right. But can I expect that it will make the sound better if I do that?
Can I interrupt? Wait, can I interrupt at this point for Phil and Reed? Leo.
Sure, Tony.
Different doesn't necessarily always mean better.
Right.
different doesn't always necessarily mean better.
Well, I'm
Now,
asking you, does it improve? Can I expect that it will improve?
Different doesn't always mean better.
True.
So in 1980, Joe, when did we do this?
1985 or
1985 or 86.
Right.
Right. Back when Joe and I have known each other a long time, and we used to work for Sperry Gyroscope in on Long Island. Joe and I were doing things like this in the early 1980s, along with like Phil and Reed and a lot of these other guys.
70s.
I had one of our technicians. We used to be able to get copper rods, a very high purity copper, for certain things that we had to do. And Joe and I said, what would happen if we took out the fuses? And I had them make fuse-sized slugs out of high purity copper rod, the same diameter as a fuse, and I had them gold-plated. I still have them. And we put them in my amplifier, a Class A amplifier at the time. And a bunch of us got over to my house, and we played without, we popped them in, we put them in, and it sounded different. Not everybody agreed that it sounded better. So different is not always better. It's up to you to decide. So, but I took them out. I took them out because, as Reed and Phil pointed out, that's like probably the worst thing you could possibly do is not have any of your equipment fuse protected in one form or another. So I took them out. And I think I put hi-fi tuning. Hi-fi tuning was, I think, the only game in town at the time for fuses, and I put hi-fi tuning fuses in my amp, which were different, and I preferred what they did. But so I guess, I keep stressing it, Leo. All of these things they cause differences, but it's up to you to decide whether or not, for your system and for your goals, it turns out to be better.
What did you decide at the time when you did it?
I liked them. I happen to like the change, but I also realized that I'd be an idiot if I left them in there.
Of course. Of course, that goes without saying.
Right.
Well, there's that balance in any tweak. Is it worth doing? I mean, is the significance enough? I mean, we're all looking for that little quarter of an inch better. I mean, I'll reposition my speakers a quarter of an inch and hear the difference and hear the whole soundstage change. But on these tweaks, I live with them and I find out, I discover whether I like them or not 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later.
Right.
The initial listen is always, oh, well, yeah, that could be better. Or that could be what I'm looking at. But then 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I'll say, nah, this isn't happening.
And actually, Joe, thank you for reminding me, because at the time we were all sitting there, I honestly didn't feel it was so much better to be, especially in that case, to be worth the risk. I mean, it was not that much better. I mean, I felt it was a little better, but I mean, it would have had to have transformed my system into like a 1985 $2 million system for me to want to take that risk permanently.
Right.
This is interesting. I tend to pursue tweaks that are very inexpensive, and that are wife acceptance factor friendly, acceptable. So although we weren't talking about acoustic treatments, those of you who've been to my house know the bookshelves that I had custom built that go behind my Martin Logans I had those built specifically to act as diffusers. At times in the past, I've actually hung absorption panels on the bottom portion as kind of a bass trap. Now I just use primarily books in magazines of different sizes and knickknacks to act as a kind of a diffuser. We had gotten a new sofa. If you guys remember my old sofa, it was kind of a burgundy color, was leather. We got rid of that and got it replaced with a new leather sofa that was very expensive. that my wife and I hated how it felt, and I wasn't happy because the sofa came up behind my ears, the back, and that really had a negative impact on my sound stage and enjoyment. Fortunately, my wife didn't like the sofa either. We got rid of that, and now we replaced it with a low upholstered sofa that actually it sounds really helped significantly the acoustics in the room and the overall sound stage and audio perception. And we went from having a cheap synthetic rug on the floor. We have a wood flooring on top of slab. And I got rid of our old synthetic rug and replaced it with a thick wool rug with a thick, I guess it's probably a some kind of a material, matted material cotton fiber underneath as a pad. And that really dampened the room and improved the RT60 measurement. So all of our furnishings in the house now, in the living room, which is our I should say our family room, which is our listening room, are all upholstered. Years ago, I got rid of our glass coffee table. Wood coffee tables can be bad. Those are all little tweaks you can make that significantly improve your overall sound stage and imaging, and are simple and effective, and just put a little thought into it.
Joe makes a good point. You said it took 3 weeks to figure out if you liked it or not, right?
Right.
You have to listen to multiple genres. I mean, I've had it where it sounded really good on certain recordings, and all of a sudden I put on something that was a little more aggressive, and man, oh man, you're running for the hills. I'm trying this acoustic tweak right now. It's an acoustic foam diffuser piece, and I have them on each side of my speaker, doing some absorption behind my speaker a little bit. I haven't figured out if I like it, because I'll put on one recording and then it'll be like, oh man, that's it. You know, it images better and this and that. Then I'll put on another recording and you know, it's a little more aggressive than I'm used to. So that is so true. What Joe said is that you got to take your time with these things. You know, any change in your system, and you got to be able to change it back. That's the key to it, right?
John, I just realized that today. The flexibility of your system. We all speak about zeroing in on exactly what we want to hear, okay? And we all fall into that trap where the genre of music that we like, we use as the test bed of what to use. But the flexibility of your system, the ability for it to adapt from one type of genre to another is very important. But we don't, when we go into a room and we spend 5 minutes in a room in a show, we don't, we hear what we like, and what we don't like, we walk out. Not taking into account the ability of that system to adapt to different genres, and that's really important. And it just hit me today, because you could be a vocal lover like I am, and you'd love that robust vocal, and then on a different kind of genre, it's just way overdone, and it just doesn't make it on a different musical genre. So that's why you have to digest this stuff. And it just kind of dawned on me today that we can't select our components and our tweaks based on the genre we love, because it restricts your system,
Very true.
One thing
McHill,
also.
and then Juan.
Yeah,
ahead.
This is what I heard. It's not my theory, but one of the dealers I knew many, many years ago, and I tried, and it seems to working, is that when somebody changes speaker cables and some other things on the floor, everything else, he bends over for a while. As a result of it, the blood actually streams to his head, and it changes how his hearing works. And it actually lasts not for a minute, but maybe for half an hour to an hour. So if you replace your cables, speaker cables, by bending over, and then you sit back, your hearing will be different.
Why would it be different for an hour?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense physiologically.
No, it's for a while. I didn't say an hour.
Well,
It's
but
like
But yeah, I mean, physiologically, I mean, I guess it's possible, and it doesn't sound impossible.
Easy.
But I think it goes to Joe's point and to John's point, and I think a lot of us do this. When you change something, leave it in. Just put something in, leave it there. Listen to it a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it takes. You'll know it's right if you take it out. And then you listen again for a week or so, and you say, I kind of miss what I was listening to.
Easy fix for bending over. Get old. You won't bend over.
Yeah, there you go.
And one other tweak, I have to leave, but I have one other tweak I actually put on recently, and it really works and it helps. But it's the most expensive tweak. New windows.
Oh, yeah.
I installed new hurricane-proof, the best windows. They're absolutely not vibrating. I can hear almost no noise from outside the house. Completely just shut everything. And I can now crank the music much louder without any negative kind of sound in the house. Nothing vibrates.
But you know what? I'm going to email you about those, Mikhail.
Yeah, which window company did you use? Because I'm thinking about that.
Yeah, me too.
Not for that purpose, but
yeah. Of course, it wasn't put on for the purpose of audio, hurricane proof. It actually decreased my electric bill for approximately 20%.
Wow.
Right, so
what manufacturer did you use? Somebody local in Florida that does hurricane proof?
Yes, that's a pretty Florida manufacturer which everybody uses here.
PGT?
I'm sorry?
Was it PGT?
I can't remember. You know what? I'm sorry. Can't remember. It was almost 25 grand for my not that huge house. So it's not cheap.
Right.
But again, you can break them, they're unbreakable, and sound is great, electric
if you remember, just post on the meetup group. If you remember, just kind of post who you used.
I'll look it up.
Or the Groups.io.
Our Group.io.
Start a thread on Groups.io.
We'll have a window thread on Groups.io.
Good idea.
But again, I'm not suggest it's the solution for small.
No. But I mean, look, I like just like Alan. I mean, I am literally at the point where I'm ready to replace the windows on my house. So it's. If you're happy with them, I'd love to know who you use.
Yeah. I can send you. I can send you a link to the company, which actually, because I had like 5 quotes and they gave me the best quote. And they did a great job.
Good.
So
yeah, that's the key. The installation is the key.
Mikhail?
Yes.
Do you live on the coast?
No, I'm living in Parish, which is Bradenton, right? Bradenton, Lakewood Ranch. So I'm not on the coast.
That's all right. If you're on the coast and the storm comes, your house is destroyed, but the windows are still there.
Maybe, but I'm not on the coast. And we had the hurricane.
Another tweak that Phil didn't talk about that would be interesting, although I doubt if many of us would do it. He's got the solar power and the battery power that you run your system off of.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, the
so
whole
you're off
system,
the grid.
Yeah, the whole system is off grid. And I use Schneider's system in order to invert it and stuff.
The EMI from the inverters is not to be dismissed casually.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The pure sine wave, quote unquote, pure sine wave inverters.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
This and other fantasies will be available to you.
Especially the cheap ones. Yeah. Oh yeah. We have a pure sine inverter. So no, yeah, it's right. I wanted to get back to the subject though, a little bit about taking the time in order to allow yourself to get used to different types of music and different situations and different volume levels and different people in the room and stuff like that. I have a really great way of doing that. I put music on that my wife likes, and she tells me whether or not the improvement was worth it. Althea does not lie. If it's bogus, she tells me. She says, yeah, take this out. It stinks. So, so I will. But you see that the problem that we're talking about is that if you put something into your system, you expect to hear something. That's also in the engineering world, it's called the non-invented here syndrome. If you haven't done it yourself, you can't take credit for it. You can't be proud of it. If somebody else has thought about it and you try it, it's not the same thing, as if you thought it and did it yourself. So that's another part of the problem that you have to deal with, and that's your own ego. You expect to hear something, you've invested money in it, and you definitely want to hear, especially if you spent a lot of money, you want to hear the improvement. But that's not always the case. It's always good to have a biased or an unbiased point of view reflect back to you what it is that you've just done.
Agreed. It always helps.
Yep.
Will has a tweak that's has 4 legs that can probably impact the sound a little bit, or at least your state of mind while listening.
What? Woofer.
Or I think you're muted, Will. We can't hear you. Oh, there you. We don't hear you, Will, although you're not muted, I don't believe. No, now turn it off. Now you're muted. Turn it off again and see if it works. No. Don't hear you. Your mic went out.
Well, forgive me for stating the obvious, but I think one of the golden rule of tweaks is you don't implement one tweak at a time.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And also, I think somebody already mentioned that all tweaks should be reversible, and you shouldn't fall in the trap of the mind tweak, where you buy something, you invest money, you implement it, and you go, oh yeah, that sounds better, to justify the cost of your tweak. You got to be kind of biased towards yourself to not fall in that trap.
All good. All agreed. Good. All good advice, Juan.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we're all humans and subject to the bias, and it's very hard to truly be impartial unless you can think of a way of setting up a blinded test, which in some cases you can do.
A number of tweaks that I've come up with myself over the years and didn't work out. So and it was invented here and it went bye-bye here too.
Yeah. And I think, the not invented here syndrome is real, but I don't know. I think a lot of us, I don't know, maybe a lot of us, I've done a lot of do-it-yourself tweaks, but I will also spend money. I've spent some good money on some of these tweaks.
Yeah, sure.
So, and I'll be the first one to get rid of them if I don't think they do anything for me. I think there are more of us who are, I think, have enough of a sense of honesty with ourselves to know when, we've got to stop fooling ourselves regardless of what we spent.
Yeah. Guys, I don't know if you can hear me, but I have to leave.
Oh, now we could hear you.
Now we can hear
great.
you.
Yeah. Parker says it's time to go out and take care of her.
Okay.
Very important.
Guys, enjoyed it very much. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, well,
Thanks, Will.
Y'all take care.
You too.
Take care.
Well, I'll be the first to admit that with all the tweaks I've done, I would say 98% of them didn't work out. I have a lot more failures than I've had successes, And I would call up Tony or I'd call up somebody and say, hey, I got this tweak. It's great. And then, a week later, I'd say, I'm embarrassed to say that it was great because I realize it's not for me. It's not going to happen. So, that's the beauty of tweaking, though. You try it and maybe you'll find something. Maybe you'll discover something.
Well, all you have to do is ask Alan, and he'll set up a mini meet or a meetup. And believe me, you'll find out if it works or not.
There you go.
We'll be sure to tell you.
But all kidding aside, I guess one observation I would offer, and I don't know if anyone would necessarily disagree with this, is I think it's way harder to determine if a tweak works in somebody else's system that you're not used to. The only way you know for sure what it is exactly something might be doing is you've got to know the system that you're listening to intimately as possible. And that's really your own system.
No, that is not true. We have done cable swaps at Alan's house, and everybody could hear the difference, even when Alan forgot which cable he had plugged.
Oh, I'm not saying you can't. I'm not saying you can't. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is to make any determination of whether or not it's actually effective. The only way you're going to know for sure is to know what it does in your own system.
Well, sometimes,
in my opinion, I mean, you may be able to hear it in certain systems, but the person that's going to hear it the most and the most difference and the littlest difference is the person in the system.
Exactly.
There's no doubt about it.
That may be true. And in the case of power chords, sometimes it's only certain tracks on certain songs. And you're like, wow, that particular track on that particular album sounds better with this particular chord. And otherwise, you don't really notice that much difference. So it may not be, that apparent, but I think, we're trained to, and we've trained ourselves to hear these minute differences. Now, then, of course, the next thing is, is that significant? Or is that universal against all tracks? But absolutely, I think if we go to Alan's house and he swaps something in and out without us knowing about it, I think most of us would notice it.
It makes a difference.
Colin, we're all looking for that wow factor. We're all looking for that. We're all trying to relive that moment when we got into this hobby, when we heard something that was extraordinary and we went, for me, it was a cartridge. For other people, it could have been speakers. Everybody had their different, that experience.
You're talking about adding a subwoofer and wow, you've got it. Or
yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're all looking to relive that wow factor. Whether we can do it or whether it'll ever be as extreme as it was when we first got into the hobby, that's another question. But I think we're all looking for that, and that's why we're constantly looking to upgrade. And I don't know, maybe it's an illness. I'm starting to believe, in my case, it's more of an illness than really a good thing.
The issue with this hobby is that we're in pursuit of something that doesn't exist, which is perfection. It doesn't exist. And then the golden question that won't be answered by this panel or anybody is, when does the tweaking stop? I mean, because I've had people in the club like, my system sounds great. It's the best it's ever sounded. I'm not ever going to do anything. And then next week, like, hey, I put another tweak and it sounds better. And when does the tweaking stop?
Especially when the tweaking is costing you, and I'm not kidding. I know people that do it, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I'm not kidding.
It
might not be a tweak, but it's an additional component. And I'm sorry. I don't care how much money you have. I couldn't do it. I don't care if I had 500 million. I don't care how much I could not do that. It's just,
in my 10 years of going,
how many subwoofers do you have?
10.
Yeah.
In my 10 years of going to these meetings, Colin, all you have to do is go to somebody else's house and hear something in their system that your system isn't doing, and you go back home and you're tweaking till the cows come home. That's the only thing. That's the benchmark. Somebody's system is just doing something that your system doesn't do.
That's true.
I think what you're saying is don't go to anybody's houses.
Wonder
Gary, your hand is up.
I wonder if it's a common experience. You sit down and listen to some CD or something that you've been wanting to hear, and pretty soon you find yourself absorbed and you can't stop playing the music. Other nights you sit down and you say, this sucks. I'm stopping here and going to television. Is that a common experience?
That's the story of my life, Gary. That is, I turn on my system and it sometimes, yes, Tony, it sounds god
Yeah.
awful. I don't want to turn that system on for 3 weeks after that because I just say, oh, that's horrible, you know. And then sometimes I'll get on that kick where everything just sounds perfect and I just can't wait to get into the sound room.
Here's another
I think
observation. You sit down and you listen and you say that there's something wrong here. That doesn't sound like it usually does. And you realize it's your ears. And you do a Valsalva and you pop your ears and everything opens up again. Oops.
That's why
That's
Alan
why I said, yeah,
suggested
the
that ear
Dobrog.
cleaner.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is, we'll make a tweak. The other consideration, which is real, we're all on the grid. If all your neighbors are using a lot of power, I know there's sometimes my system I'll turn on, it sounds horrible. The next day, it sounds fantastic. I haven't changed anything. I think some of that is the electric grid. And I bought this. I have this Ting device. I have this Ting device that I got for free from State Farm that monitors the electricity in our house, supposedly to identify shorts or potential fire hazards. And it gives me a weekly report, day by day, on the voltage variations. And it's incredible how often it fluctuates. You can see the peaks and the valleys.
Voltage doesn't matter.
Well, or current maybe, I'm not sure, but basically, I think that's part of the other consideration that can change how something from day to day. And if we make a tweak when things are in one, electrical state of our house, and the next day it's in a different state, we may say it's due to the tweak. It may not be. I don't know how you all feel about that.
No, Alan,
I'm
I
not a
find that
power
absolutely
conditioners.
true. I have a lot of commercial areas around me, okay, and they generate a lot of their own electric. And when they shut down at 5 o'clock, they dump a lot of that electric into the grid, and Duke Energy has to buy it by law, okay? A lot of that they filter out because it's such junk that they can't even distribute it, okay? But how much of that Duke Energy is doing, I have no idea.
Right.
But I have sand pits around me that generate their own electricity, and when they shut down, they dump it into the grid, and my system is easily heard. And Tony's heard it a million
Oh
times.
yeah, many
It does.
times. And
It's just-
I think that's exactly. And I think maybe Reed was trying to jump in and make the same point. It's not so much the voltage. It's the junk that's on the line. The more stuff that's on the system, the higher the level of junk is on the line typically. And that's what's more so causing problems.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yep.
Gary, what are you doing there?
A new toy. You know how I video some of the meetings, and I try to hold the camera out away from me and move it around. I got a Steadicam.
Oh, cool.
For my cell phone, and it keeps the phone oriented no matter what you do.
Gimbal.
And it's a cheap Chinese device for $55.
That's cool.
So you need something though to mask your breathing. On the last couple of videos you recorded, it sounds like you're on a ventilator.
Well,
Call him Darth Vader.
Point. That's the point of it that I'm trying to make.
He's a
I can hold it away.
Darth Vader effect. Hey, gentlemen. Hey, thanks
I
for
can
the
hold
invite.
it away from me, and it'll do away from my breathing.
Yeah.
Is Phil still here?
It
Is Phil
also
still
shows
here? Or
my
is he gone?
pod.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, hey Phil, did you work at Bell Labs?
I did.
Oh, okay.
Great.
I interned there as a student for a summer in 1981
Which facility?
in New Jersey.
Yeah,
The one
I
by
was at-
Rutgers University there.
Yeah, I was at the labs in Denver.
Denver, okay. I didn't go to work there full time, but I enjoyed it that weekend, that summer. It was awesome.
It's something to be surrounded by 850 people who are absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
it's amazing.
It's just, it raises your intelligence. It really does.
Yeah, it was a.
Juan, your hand is up.
Hey, I just want to say thanks for the invite. I got to go because I got to go to Home Depot before they close and buy some concrete slabs and
Yeah, you go. Tweaks.
I have to go to the
You gotta
pharmacy
do
to get
some
some air
tweaking.
cleaner. But anyway, I know it's a long trip for you guys, but you're invited to Facility Labs in Melbourne is hosting us on the 19th from 1 to 4. If anybody wants to venture a road trip out there, you guys are invited. So let Joe know if you want to join us out there. They'll be providing us some a factory tour and food. And anyway, it's on the 19th of this month.
Thanks, Juan.
Appreciate the invite. Yeah.
Have a good
Thanks.
night.
Let us know how that Home Depot shopping spree goes.
Thank you for hosting,
John?
Alan. Good night.
Sure. John?
I have a question. System warm up versus your ears take about 10 to 20 minutes to actually acclimate to sound versus system warm up. How can you prove that? Sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I can go and put my system on and I can listen to it right away.
Leave the
I
gear
don't.
on.
I'm sorry?
Leave the gear on 24/7.
Well, I understand that, but that's not my point. Is it system warm up, or is it your ears getting used to the sound and there's articles. I mean, there's papers about this. And you can ask AJ. AJ will tell you. AJ will tell you straight up.
If we have tubes in the system, like my hybrid tube preamp, it definitely gets better as time goes on over the first half hour to an hour.
Tubes are a little different bird. But I'm just wondering, that kind of enters my head. I'm like, am I hearing something that it takes to get acclimated and then all of a sudden you're acclimated? Or is it the system actually warming up and changing sound? It's an interesting subject anyways. I know what AJ would say, but.
Or the power line is changing behind your back.
Or that, yeah. I mean, there's so many variables.
Alan was spot on with this.
Yeah, there's so many variables.
Yeah. We have somebody came in late here. Who's on iPhone 2?
Lenny. And in Orlando.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
No.
Hey, good evening, gentlemen.
Here is Lenny.
I will chime in and comment on what was just brought up. I noticed that sometimes one's mindset has to get adjusted. You got to get rid of everything else that's during the day, so your mindset is more concentrated on the sound. And you're right, it changes, as Reed said, the line changes. And I'll sit here and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, it spikes and it's like, whoa, that sounds good. I put a CD in last week. I played a song. It didn't sound right. I came back an hour later and played the song again, and it sounded so much better. So you're right, there is a cold time till there's a warm up, but I think it varies. And I think the factors in the mix include the power line, as we all know. Our mind have we got all the clutter out of there, and we're concentrating more. Your mood, just all those factors. So to answer the gentleman's question, there's just a little too much in the mix, but give it a half an hour to an hour, and maybe things have settled down or settled in, and now it's meeting your expectations. It's a great question. The time of the day, sunset into night, the power line moving around, your mindset, you've decluttered your mind, and you're really concentrating on it. Those are the things that I think of that come to mind.
Well,
Thank you,
I
gentlemen.
think a big downside to this hobby is that how often do we go to the sound room to do critical listening, and how often do we go to the sound room to really listen to music? And I think the downside of this perfectionism is going into the sound room to listen, to do critical listening, and to give our opinion or to philosophize about what our system is doing and how it could do it better is probably is the Achilles heel of this hobby. That if we could just go in there and listen to music and enjoy the music for what it is, we might not be the tweakers we are.
Joe, here's another thing.
Audiophile. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
We knew if we knew what perfect was, then when we came in to sit down that evening, we go, okay, we know what perfect sounds like. It's in my head.
what's going on? All right, I got to wait for the system to settle in. The power line needs to change, but we don't know what a perfect system sounds, what the perfect sound sounds like. Music, whatever track we're listening to, or the genre of music. So we're never going to know, and we're going to always be chasing this because there's always room
Yes,
for
you do.
improvement. But
We go to live concerts all the
I guess that's
time.
the fun part.
That perfect
I don't
sound
know
is
why
different
when
for
I
everybody.
interrupt, I don't get heard. I'm saying when you go to a live concert, you don't have any of this crap happen.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
You're
I
right.
do. I do.
No,
That might Reed's brought that up before. That probably the most perfect thing to listen to is live stuff. Go ahead, Reed.
No, but the person recording it does have that stuff happen.
No. I'm saying
Trust
when
me,
you go to a live
I've
concert.
done this. I know better. Yeah. I always take power conditioning with me when I go out to do a recording. Always.
Even if you're on battery power?
The recorder will run on battery. If I'm only running 2 mics with no mixing, the recorder will run on battery. And we just did a recent A/B test at the last CF meeting, and it's definitely better on batteries. That's all I can tell you. I'll charge the pack up the night before, run it on the AC line right up until the conductor raises the baton, bang, cut the batteries right before the baton goes down, and so forth. And it'll last about 4 hours with long, good cells.
Totally get off the grid. Why not?
Yep.
Is anybody
Absolutely.
running other than Phil running their system off the grid, battery powered?
Can I chime in on that?
Does George have battery power out there? I thought I saw that when we were out there.
He
George
has
does.
solar. I don't know if he has.
Oh yeah,
I don't know. He
solar
might.
then. Yeah.
He might have a battery wall. He might have a battery wall. I'm not sure.
No, he
George
doesn't.
Lindsay.
George does not.
Oh.
I have a battery chime in. The system I have has an external. I've got a device that picks up the satellites, and I use that as an external reference clock on my Mutech reclocker, and it runs off of a 12-volt power supply. When I switch it over to a battery, it's that, as Reed would say, oh my goodness, difference. It's noticeable every time. And I have the little 12-volt battery charged in here, and I was listening to Alison Krauss this evening. I switched over to the battery. If I switch back to the 12 volts, you will notice a difference. So I have tried at least one component with DC battery pure, and it does make that noticeable difference.
Which it would be hard to power a high-powered amp on battery, obviously, unless you got a whole battery wall.
Right.
But which component or components do you think are would most benefit from being battery powered? Like a DAC, the digital,
Oh, baby, I've got an answer for this one. And Lynn,
that's a can of worms I opened up.
Okay, Reed. You want me to tell him, Lynn?
Yes, sir.
Okay, electrostatic speakers by far and away. Hello, electrostatic speakers by far and away.
Yeah, we heard you.
Yep. The deal is, of course, the power supply comes typically today with most stats. They've got a transformer. Then they have a Cockcroft-Walton voltage multiplier to jack it up to, let's say, 5K, whatever they run. And they're very poorly filtered. I mean, it's not the sort of power supply technology you would use for B+ in a tube power amp or something. So you have a situation where the AC line crap rides through the transformer up into the Cockcroft-Walton stack and then bang right onto the panels. And it absolutely interacts with the audio that's being driven in the panel at the same time. Yep. It's a problem and has been for decades. Yeah. So yeah, that's the one component that takes it in the jaw.
So how could you overcome that?
Oh, baby, you don't have enough time. Okay, we got
off grid.
Well, Lenny and I have been working. Well, actually, I've been working on power filtering for electrostatic speakers about 30 years, 35 years now. Lenny for the last 20. And I have a filter. I build my own. It's unique and it works. And it helps. Does it stop it altogether? No, but it's much better with it. And I have never found an inverter that was clean enough to eliminate this problem. So.
I know there was a company years ago, I don't know if they're still in business, I can't think of the name of it, who were selling battery powered preamp that ran off a lead acid battery. We constantly recharged.
Mission. It was Mission. Yeah. I
remember I heard a company like that in Exponent. I don't know if you remember, Tony, but they were doing all battery, and it wasn't Mission. I mean, that's an English.
It was another one, Red Wine. Maybe Red Wine Audio might have been the name of it.
It might have been, yeah. It might have been.
Yeah, they had some battery powered source gear, and now what's interesting, of course, you know, the audio industry takes fundamental concepts, you know, and figures out how to jack up the price ridiculously to make a profit on fairly straightforward stuff. So you know, the latest thing that's been for the last few years is that those Strom tank battery powered, you know, monstrosities that are big enough to, you know, power entire systems.
If you ever get your hands on one of those things, Tony, you call me up. I will come over and move it to my place in a second.
Yeah, well, you know, at Exponent, there was a speaker company out of Europe. They actually, and it's not one of the regular names, not somebody we hear about often, but actually their speakers were quite good. But what they did was, like 4 days before the show started, they came in and they actually built a room within the hotel room that was their own design, where they essentially eliminated the room by creating a room inside that room that was all tuned to support the system they were demonstrating, and it was run by 2 gigantic Strom tank systems.
Yeah, okay.
And I got to say, it sounded pretty darn good.
Okay.
I mean, I was pretty impressed. I mean, I got to remember the name of those speakers. I'm sure I have it.
The one criteria that I would use in evaluating something like that is it dead consistent, minute to minute, hour to hour, day to day?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Year to year.
Yeah, and you can't tell
you the same.
Exactly, and you never you can't ever make decisions like that listening in a show.
Bing, ding.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Next question.
Right.
So what did I
Any
miss
further-
this evening? Because I chimed in late.
You missed everything, Lenny.
Yeah, you did.
Well, this will be available for a recap. That was the message, so I can always go back.
Yeah, I did record this, so I'll throw it up on our Suncoast Audiophile Society YouTube channel. I don't know if it's worth. I probably run through it at 2 speed if you save your time. But
Oh, there's other things you can do. There's other things you can do while you're listening to it, like listen to music while you're listening to it. I guess.
I don't think all of us are gonna run out and make any significant changes, but it's always interesting to share perspectives and think about things that we hadn't considered previously. But I apologize because I was talking over a lot of you guys at times. I should raise my hand every time I wanted to speak. But you know, we're pursuing the state of diminishing returns here with our tweaks, and I think that we represent the lunatic fringe of listeners and music lovers who are these extreme audiophiles. And as Joe says, sometimes we should just sit and just listen to the music. I know sometimes I enjoy the background music the most because I'm doing something else, and all of a sudden I'll hear an artist I've never heard of before, and it just captures my ear, and I go, wow, that is nice. I'm not even in the sweet spot. In fact, one of my other tweaks that I was going to tell briefly is my outdoor Lanai stereo speakers. Just no cheap OSD speakers. I run them in mono.
Yeah.
Because I'm never in the sweet spot. I get better sound wherever I am by running them in mono. I probably spend 2+ hours a day out on my Lanai, and I love it with the music, just streaming Radio Paradise out there, or from my server and my own music. And it's immensely enjoyable. I'm definitely not listening to high-end audio out there, but it's all about the music.
Can I chime in?
Sure.
Cause, my friend, when I lived in Brevard County, Reed and I both have been in radio. I worked at a middle of the road radio station in Melbourne, WMMB, 1240 AM, when they played music. This week and last week, 1410 AM out of Lake County. They have shows, but they play music. I can sit and listen to middle of the road music from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 50s, 70s, 80s on an AM radio station that's 60 miles away and enjoy it. There's some magic about amplitude modulation when it comes to the voice and even radio. And I grew up, like all of us, listening to music on AM radio. I can listen to anyone. And last week, someone played a song off of a Bread album called Too Much Love. The last time I heard it, I played it on vinyl in the 70s at the station. And I listened to it and I got up and I went and chased after I bought the CD last week. But it sounded so good on the AM radio that day. It brought back memories of when I tracked it at the AM radio station. I enjoy MOR music on AM radio. So I know what you mean. I'll sit and listen to it for hours because it's about the music. You're absolutely right.
But it's also not challenging you as an audiophile.
Absolutely.
I've heard people that go out in their car, they'd rather drive around in their car and listen to music rather than go home.
So
and have
can I tell you why that's going on? Because I've got 2 iPods in my Mazda with music, and I drive down the road and it gives you the experience and everything. You're outside, you're looking at the world, you're looking at greenery. It seems like you're enjoying the music more when you're outside.
I think it's also partially because you're not judging it.
You got it.
I think
Well,
if you're sitting there judging every note, you might as well get up and watch TV, like Gary says.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now, as Joe said, if your speakers are musical enough to bring you into the performance, then that's what it's all about for everyone, I think.
Yep.
I think what's key is this: don't apply expectations in that moment to a system that can't meet that criteria. Accept it as it is. We've all grown up listening to music on AM radio, then FM, then vinyl, then 8-track, cassette, CD, stream. Don't apply an expectation to a system that has limitations, and you won't frustrate yourself.
Good point.
It's hard to do that. It's hard to do that. And everyone knows that. It's hard to do sometimes. I mean, other times you get swept away in the music and it's fantastic. I think like you said, it's also depends on the mood. I think the mood is key. It's the mood you go in there with. I think it's key.
Yeah.
I've come in to listen to my system and got up and got out because I wasn't in the mood. Go away. It's not time.
No.
Another day.
We covered a lot of.
There must. Joe and I talk about this a lot. I mean, there must be something wrong with me because, for like ever since I got my system to where it is over, I'd say the course of the last maybe 2-3 years, I don't have any of these problems anymore. I mean, I turn my system on at 8:30 in the morning. It plays music all day, and I sit. I love it. I sit and I listen. I don't. Will I throw in a tweak just to try it? Who cares? It's like it doesn't make or break my system. So maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe.
No.
I mean, and a lot of you guys have heard my system, so I don't know. Maybe I've just gotten tired of trying to get to whatever the next level is. I don't know. But
we're enjoying the journey.
I turn it on and I'm happy, and I never walk in, sit here and listen and feel like I'm not happy. I don't know. Maybe
you appreciate you appreciate what you have and where and all the efforts have gone to get it where it is. You've arrived in your head. It's like is there anything else I can do that's going to make that?
Does that mean there's never? Does that mean there's never going to be a change? Of course not. I mean, technology moves on, things get better, so on and so forth. But I think kind of a question that like all of us, I'm sure, think about is, are we looking for the next change, or if something new gets developed, are we curious to try it? I think those are two kind of the answer to that question kind of drives, maybe how satisfied you are with your system or not.
I think if you wait for the next wave of technology that's going to take everything by storm, so to say, it's going to make that oh my goodness difference. Then everyone eventually gets on their surfboard and rides that wave to see where it takes them.
It's feeling as though you need to find it versus
it might find you. It might find you.
Right.
Okay, Reed, let me let you get in, and then I'll give the final word. We're at 2 hours here, but go ahead, Reed.
Tony is aware of the time-based correction technology that we're using. He adopted it, and the answer is, I didn't go looking for that. It found me.
Right.
So
right. You
there
didn't
you go.
up until that occurred, you didn't feel you needed to run out and make your system better.
No, but once I heard it, I knew.
Right. Right. But I think that's the point. We can be satisfied with what we have, and if we are, then we know we're there. Something may come along someday. And if it does, it does. But if it doesn't, we're not going to be sitting here gnashing our teeth, worrying about, do I hear it not the way I want to? I don't know. I mean, that's I don't know. That's not me. I don't worry about stuff like that anymore.
You don't want to get into me thinks too much about it. Just sit back and enjoy it for a while, right?
Alan.
I think you're talking about the self-actualization of the audiophile. When we get to the point where we can just enjoy the music, and maybe something better will come along eventually, but we're perfectly content with what we've got and where we're at with it.
Exactly.
Rather than chasing audio nirvana constantly, which becomes a compulsion. I think I'm at that point, and I hope most of us ultimately get there.
I think a lot of us are.
Yeah, I think we are. I'm definitely at that point. Yeah.
I mean, certainly in the Suncoast. I mean, a lot of the Suncoast guys, have wonderful systems that seem to, be exactly what we're all looking for. And the Central Florida Club, a bunch of the guys have, but I think you put your finger right on it, Alan.
All right, I think we'll end on that note. Thank you all for hanging in there. Very interesting discussion.